right, I'm ready.
What's that?
Our new Space Coast Credit Union watchdog.
Watchdog.
The financial products and services you want, plus the protection you need. Space Coast Credit Union. Your life, your financial watchdog.
Again, Dolphins fans, your Miami Dolphins are at Indianapolis at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Look, it's still too early for a must-win game, but once again, the Dolphins are in a need-to-win situation. Hello, everybody. I am Chris Perkins, your host. Welcome to this edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I am your Miami Dolphins columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. That is David Furones. He is your Miami Dolphins writer for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Furones, tell the folks what you did on your bye week.
Hey, relaxed a little bit, had dinner with the family, went out in Miami a little bit. I really get to actually just enjoy my own city. I take a lot of things for granted in Miami itself, and I take so much advantage of the time we have on the road. So I did get to go out a little bit in Miami for once.
Nice. And you know what, Furones, I was saying, it's been kind of a disjointed season. This was our third Sunday. We were talking about this yesterday in the media room. This was our third Sunday being able to watch football like normal Americans. How about that?
That's right. An odd schedule. You had one Thursday night, you had one Sunday night, a bye week. So now we have a stretch of some regular Sunday 1 p.m. games.
Yep. So let's get this thing going. As always, we'd like to thank our viewers for checking in with us here on Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. We remind you to leave comments and questions and thoughts on our live chat, the best place to get intelligent Dolphins talk. We remind you once again, if you miss any part of this show, you can get it, the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast. Also, we invite you to sign up for our weekly newsletter, Fins Flash, by using the QR code on your screen. And finally, we invite you to answer our weekly Dolphins poll question on sunsentinel.com. This week's question: what do you expect to see from the Dolphins on Sunday at Indy? We will go over some of those answers later on in the show. Okay, so like we said, the bye week is over. The Dolphins have 12 consecutive games from here on out. Tua is eligible to begin practice on October 23rd. That's a week from Wednesday. He's eligible to play on October 27th. That's 2 games from now, the home game against Arizona. So on today's show, me and Furones are going to talk about how much of a difference Tua can make when he returns. We'll also talk about what Coach Mike McDaniel can do to simplify this offense. Snoop Huntley needs a little bit of help out there. We saw last week the 41 carries for 193 yards out of the run game. They could use another performance like that, right? Of course, we're going to have our Furones bonus. We can't do a show without that. And we will have our predictions for the Colts game. So, as we always say around here, there's an ocean of possibilities. Let's dive in. All right, Furones, I like how you smile after I say that all the time.
To be all smiles on this show. We're trying to bring positive vibes.
That's it, baby. That's it. See, there you go. That's what I like to hear, Furones. I like that, baby. We're going to smile and be positive here today. So Tua's return, Furones.
Until you hear what I have to say.
Tua's return, Furones. There's a lot of ways that this can help the Dolphins, right? It can give them a confidence boost. It can bring back the deep passing game. It can help Mike McDaniel with his play calling. It could help the defense, right? Because the longer the offense stays on the field or the more points they score, then it makes their life easier. It makes their job easier. But here's my thing, Furones. defenses are going to defend the Dolphins in the same way, right? The two deep safeties. And we saw that the Dolphins had problems before when Tua was in there against Jacksonville and Buffalo, getting them the ball on a consistent basis. What do you think is going to be the Dolphins' solution here? I mean, or do you use the tight end? Do you use the run game? How do you think they're going to be able to get the ball to those two guys effectively once Tua returns?
Yeah, and we can get to Tua and his return in a minute, Perk, but I want to make sure we start with this one last game the Dolphins have to play without Tua, because it could end up being so vital toward this team's playoff chances, depending on whether Miami is 3-3 or 2-4 at the point of Tua's return. And you know where I'm going with this. I think we do need to touch on the IR decision on Tua, which put him out 4 games minimum, because if Tua were available for this one, I think most people expect Miami to go into Indy, come away with a road win, whereas now it's a result that's very much up in the air with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. And all indications for a while now have led us to believe Tua can be activated fairly quickly upon his eligibility. So it seems like the Dolphins have been sitting on the final stages of the NFL's 5-step concussion protocol to clear him, and we understand why, the optics of it, and obviously the scary images when we initially saw it. But if this team would have just taken it week to week, like most concussions are handled, we don't see IR for Teron Armstead, we don't see IR for Kendall Fuller, for Devon Achane, or other quarterbacks around the league. Miami could have still kept Tua out for 38 days between games, with the bye week, the 3 games missed, and 3 extra days from the original concussion occurring on a Thursday night instead of Sunday. So now it's 45 days between games played because of the IR decision at a minimum. So will those extra 7 days, 15% of their recovery time, prove more valuable than the outcome of this game when it's the difference between 2-4 or 3-3? That's what this comes down to me, and when we analyze this weekend and that decision. So. And here's the other thing. He can't officially practice until he is eligible to return off IR. So if he were capable of being cleared days, weeks ago, he couldn't practice anyway because of the IR rules. I just fear this precise scenario of the Dolphins losing this game without Tua, falling to 2-4, it turning out to be the difference in making the playoffs, and then you're stuck looking back on that IR decision. But if they come away with a win, it's all justified in terms of the season, along with the obvious health benefits for Tua himself, which we all know and wouldn't need to address that ad nauseum. But now to actually answer the question, and I will quickly, because I've gone on a little bit of a monologue there.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Sure. Yeah, and yes, Tua's patented accuracy, anticipation on throws, his orchestration of the offense, ability to distribute to his targets, especially with his rapport with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, will all be welcome for this offense, which has averaged 10 points per game without him. So obviously it will be quite the uptick to have him return.
Before we go any further, Rob, what's up? Peter McDowell checking in from Canada as usual. Pretty boy, what's up, man? Rashawn Brockenbow, Mal B. Crazy, Ender Fireplace YZ, Shape Money, what's up? Eddie Montero Culturati, Matt Newton, welcome. Furones, let's pursue the decision to put Tua on IR, because that's a very interesting topic that you bring up. I was in favor of it. I'm still in favor of it, and here's why. We didn't know the severity of the concussion, and I'm not even putting the public perception into it. I'm putting Tua's health into it, and his recent concussion history, which goes back to 2022. It didn't happen last year, as we know. I think it was the responsible thing to do. Was it totally necessary? No, it was probably a little over the top as far as being responsible and reacting to the situation. But I think that this is a situation where it was better to be overly cautious than even normally cautious, if that makes sense. And because of Tua's health and his injury history, I don't think you had much of a choice here, but you do. What do you think the Dolphins, if Tua played this week, what do you think the public outcry or the PR hit would be? Even though when we've seen Tua in the locker room, he's been perfectly normal, right? We've seen him talking to Snoop Huntley. We've all dapped him up and said, "What's up, Tua?" Everybody says around the facility he's fine. Could the Dolphins have withstood the PR hit, do you think?
That's the thing. What's the PR hit at this point? I understand early on, if let's say they rushed to clear him back, and it would bring back thoughts of that week 3 in 2022 with he banged his head and it wasn't a concussion officially, but it was just what they end up saying back, more so that he hurt his back. And it was from an earlier play, even though we saw him like shake off the cobwebs and reach to his head. But then he played 4 days later, Thursday night, and then really definitively suffered a concussion. The first time we saw him go into that scary fencing response that no one wants to see. So, I mean, I think at this point, because I laid it out, it's 38 days now since the concussion. I don't think you're receiving a PR hit for not putting him on IR, which, considering you have the bye as well in it, and those extra 3 days that I mentioned, because it didn't even occur on the Sunday of week 2.
Right.
There's just so much time. You could still, without putting him on IR, you could say, all right, we're just bridging it into the bye, going week to week. You have those 3 games that he misses. Let's just say, all right, even if he clears concussion protocol, you're not back for that week 5 game at New England. You try to get for that duration. And then you still have the bye to get extra time. That's 2 more weeks, right, from that 5 game up to the 1 week into the bye, and then another week into the Colts game. So, 38 days as opposed to 45 days between games. I don't think you're seeing a PR hit for bringing him back, like if you're rushing him back, because from all indications, and I mean, he was going out with his family to Disney on Ice the very next night. Travel. I know fans want to make a big deal of that. I say it to make some kind of ordeal, just bringing it up as anecdotal evidence that has been given to us that he's doing okay. Then he travels to Seattle, all this, and that all the feedback has been positive as he's met with doctors, met with neurologists, which is great. I mean, I think you could have bridged it to the bye, gotten his 4 weeks off while missing just 3 games, and then this is a key game where I just feel like if you end up losing it without him, then we could end up looking back on that one if, let's say, they only lose 3 or 4, or let's say they're 2-4, and then they only lose 3 or 4 the rest of the way with him, and then they end up just 1 game out of the playoffs, then that's the one we're going to look back on.
Okay, so this also raises another topic, Furones. We think that Tennessee is going to be the game that they look back on like it was last year, but any of them could be. This could be.
With a backup quarterback playing. So
Right. So let me ask you this, Furones. Can you definitively say that the Dolphins beat Seattle if Tua plays? Can you definitively say that they beat Tennessee if Tua plays?
No, just Tennessee. I would not definitively say they would beat Seattle again. That's a difficult environment to go in. I mean, before the season, if I'm just chalking up wins and losses, I went home against Jaguars, win, and then I was saying in some way or another they'll split the 2 between home against Buffalo and at Seattle, but you couldn't say definitively they'd travel across the country and win in that environment. But then home against Tennessee, that should be a win regardless. The Patriots one, which they were Jalen Polk heel away from losing that one too.
Right.
Let's not forget. So, and then now this Colts game is very much up in the air, where I feel like that was another one I would have had them going into Indianapolis and winning if they had Tua.
Yeah, I agree. Furones, you're getting people that agree with you. Rob says, I agree with Furones. Matt Newton says the Dolphins should not have IR Tua. 4 weeks off, including the bye, should have been the plan. So it's very interesting. And here's some more comments when we're talking about Tua coming back this week, with people saying that they've got to run the ball. Let me get to Peter McDowell here, which I just lost his comment, but I think that he had said that here we go. Let's keep working on the run game. As look at how Buffalo ran it well against a good Jets defense. Our run game will be key to us winning ugly in December and January. Then let's see here. There are a couple that agreed with that. the run game, Furones, here's one thing that I've seen with the run game, and I'm going to write about this later in the week. I haven't done all of my research. Last season, they had 11 games in which they rushed for 100 or more yards. Their record was 6-5. And in McDaniel's tenure here, they've had 19 games that they've rushed for 100 or more yards. Their record is 10-9. The run game has not made a huge difference in wins and losses. I think what it does is it can get teams out of that too high safety look and make it easier to go over the top with passes, but that has not directly led to wins. Anecdotally, from my research, I've still got to do more. Just knocked over my bottle of water here. So what do you, and I'll throw this out to people also with the record, again, last year 6-5 when you rushed for over 100, in McDaniel's time 10-9. What do you think is the biggest benefit of the run game? Because I do think that Mike McDaniel looks at every run and says, that's one chance that I didn't throw deep to Tyreek or Jalen Waddle. That's one chance that we didn't have to score on one play, even though they have a big play run game. I'm not sure that McDaniel is fond of the run, and we know that he came from San Francisco, a place that, the run was a big part of their offense. I'm just wondering what the run actually does for this offense, and that's a question I'm going to ask in my column. But what do you think it does?
No, and he not only comes from San Francisco, he was run game coordinator,
right,
for years before he was offensive coordinator. So I think he does value the run, but I think he just ends up getting away from it sometimes within a game and within how he wants to call plays and also react to. He creates it to then take advantage of over pursuits. So I think he wants to often get to that point or sooner than just committing to the run until the defense has really proven that it can stop it. Like the way most play callers maybe would, is it like make you prove that you can stop it, and then you start to take advantage of all the over pursuits, all the overcompensation that occurs, whether it's sticking an extra player in the box or getting away from those too high safety looks and so on and so forth, whether it's running the outside zone and getting players really going sideways before you start running between the tackles. All these things come into the equation. So I think for Mike McDaniel, yes, stick to the run. That's a huge thing coming off the bye and a great benefit that the Dolphins found in that final game before the bye week.
Yeah, I've got to do more research, but I'm just shocked. The Dolphins, by the way, are 1-2 this year when rushing for more than 100 yards. The New England game being the one that they won, obviously, but yeah, 10-9 and 6-5. I really thought that I would see better win results than that. So I've got to dive into this and see exactly what's going on with this run game and why they aren't winning more when they rush for over 100 yards. Matt Newton agreeing with you. There was no need to rush to IR except for PR backlash.
Here's the other thing with it is that it sets a precedent now. Like it sets this precedence where every concussion from here on out for Tua is minimum an IR stint because you're doing it this time after a whole year. Well, that's what you're saying when you do it is that we know because of his history now minimum. Well, we have to put him on IR because of the concussion, unless if let's say they found that this occurrence they could have brought him back sooner and then. Maybe going forward, they take that information. A lot of information is probably, kept inside team facilities and training facilities with doctors between them and Tua. But it kind of sets that precedent because of his history. This is how we operate with Tua with any concussion because this is also after he played a full year healthy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's not like those 2022 concussions were still so recent. Now we've had some time where now obviously if there's another one this year then that's just catastrophic. If you have two occurrences in the same season again like you did in 2022 where we know that'll be a longer recovery time based on just the proximity of the head trauma occurring from one to the other. But let's say years down the road if it doesn't happen again and then suddenly it does in 2026 or 27 right. Then you're kind of establishing this is the protocol now with regards to Tua as opposed to everyone else who does not get put on IR. It's just week to week go through protocol, and then also you can't practice. You can't practice until you're back, designated to return. So those late stages you cannot clear because you're not allowed to practice while you're on IR. You have to be designated for return. Once you've cleared the 4-game minimum, that's when you can begin to practice with the team, which might be a limited session the first time. God forbid, then Tua also doesn't get the necessary reps the first week back in practice to be comfortable starting against Arizona. Whether that will or won't happen, I don't know. Mike McDaniel wouldn't commit to the Arizona game being his first game back either.
Yeah, I think that's going to be his first game back. I'll say this: I think every concussion is different, and you treat it differently. The reason that I liked IR for this one was because it was such a seemingly innocent play that he didn't slam into DeMar Hamlin. He ran into DeMar Hamlin. And as I understand, the Dolphins still aren't sure whether the collision caused the concussion or Tua's head hitting the ground caused the concussion. But either way, I thought because it was such a, innocent play that, you need to be overly cautious. And in the future, if he got concussed like that again, I wouldn't necessarily IR him. But I just think as they say, every concussion is different. This one might cause you to be foggy for 3 weeks. This one might cause you to be foggy for 3 days. You treat them all differently on a case-by-case basis. So I hear what you're saying. I don't know that there's a precedent set here. Let's go back out here. Hooked Up Joe, glad to see you back, man. Hooked Up Joe says IR was all optics. So tired of moves for optical reasons. Cat for Life is back. Cat for Life says, run the rock, bro. I agree with you there. PDC says power football wins games when your QB is not that good. McDaniel needs to stop ignoring this. His guys like to run block. Let them run. We know that Indy going to the run and this week's game and not having Tua, Indy is the second worst run defense in the NFL. The Rams are the worst. Matter of fact, I think the Dolphins play 4 of the current 6 worst run defenses. They played Seattle. They'll play Arizona. They've got Indy, and they've got the Rams on the schedule. That's 4 of the current bottom 6. But, the running the ball, Furones, do you think that McDaniel will do that? We've just discussed it would be wise, blah, blah, blah. We saw what he did last week, but we know he tends to get away from the run. Will he run the rock this week, do you think?
I think he will, especially since it is another game without Tua. Especially and maybe even incorporate Taylor Huntley into it. That was one thing that wanting to see. I think a lot of those early parts of that Patriots game could have looked a little bit prettier if you get Huntley on some of the zone reads, read option type of plays. For Mike McDaniel, to dust off the old Washington RG3 playbook. That coach, get him involved in some of that kind of stuff. So I'd love to see it. But, especially it's another game you're trying to just survive, again, without your starting quarterback. So, yes. Commit to the run, even if it's Raheem Mostert and Jalen Wright. You saw how effective that combination is doing. But if you also can get Devon Achane cleared from his concussion and have him not even miss a game because he had the bye week also, we did see him at Monday practice in a red non-contact jersey, then that would be great. If you come back with a 3-headed monster and all of them could split like 10 to 12 carries, maybe one more so than the other, but that would be fantastic for this offense, especially trying to survive another game without Tua.
Yep. All right, let's go over to segment number 2, and that is what can Mike McDaniel do to speed up the Dolphins' improvement. The Dolphins currently 2-3, offense is struggling. Defense is like, number 5 in the league, Furones? Off the top of your head? I think it's number 5 in the league, but the offense is definitely struggling.
But let me ask you, just because you throw out these stats, acting like, I think it's this, but because you looked it up beforehand. And I'm not like you don't really know every stat.
I'm not 100%. I think they're either 5 or 6. I got a lot of numbers in my head, and a lot of them are wrong. So I always like to bounce it off people. To ask for
if you missed by 1. If there were 5 and you said 6, and yeah.
I love it. So listen, here's my original question before I was interrupted there. What can McDaniel do to speed up the Dolphins' improvement? And look, we go out here to our texts and our chats. And Rob says would be interesting to understand the win-loss record with more than 100 yards rushing when Tua starts and finishes the game. Cap for Life says, Perk, we got to simplify the offense with our current personnel, in my opinion. Peter McDowell says, I think Jalen Wright is on the verge of breaking out. Hope we can find a way to use him more this week. When you talk about what Mike McDaniel can do to help simplify the offense or speed up the improvement, what are the roles of offensive coordinator Frank Smith and quarterback coach Darrell Bevell? Do you think that they have input? Do you think they try to change McDaniel's mind? Are they yes men? Does McDaniel ignore them? What do you think is their role in the offense, especially as they're struggling right now?
Well, Frank Smith has been brought up into this offensive coordinator role with Mike McDaniel. So I see him as a similar type of coach. I think he models a lot of how he operates off McDaniel and why he has also now gotten some interviews for head coaching jobs. We know Carolina was one. I think, remind me, there was at least one other. Was it Seattle? Or was that Anthony Weaver that got that one?
Yeah, I think that was Weave.
Yeah. So, but I feel like there was one other, or at least he was considered for one other, Carolina for sure. But he is a guy that will be considered now for head coaching jobs. Now, this offense has to finish this year a lot better than it is currently for that to continue for Frank Smith. But I see him a lot in the same mold as Mike McDaniel. I see them as like-minded individuals. Yep. Even McDaniel, hey, he was a non-play calling OC that 1 year where he was an offensive coordinator in San Francisco before he got this head role with the Dolphins. So maybe similar track as well for him. And Darrell Bevell, we know he has extensive experience as an offensive coordinator, a play calling offensive coordinator. I mean, we're talking about time with the Green Bay Packers where he had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. We're talking with the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions, Seattle Seahawks, not in that order. Jacksonville Jaguars, he had Trevor Lawrence at the beginning. So he had Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford between Seattle and Detroit. So a lot of experience there. I would think he comes forward with a lot of what he sees as well. But it's going to take a collective effort, and I think what the Dolphins need to do is as we've mentioned, stick to the run game, commit to it. And as far as the pre-snap motions and shifts, I think that's just so much a part of the identity of the offense that Mike McDaniel isn't going to get away from it. He's going to demand that it is operated under a backup quarterback, and I think Tyler Huntley showed a drastic improvement from his first start to his second start in running the offense, and then now maybe even more so after he had a whole bye week to then now prepare for this Colts week.
Here's what I think McDaniel needs to do. He does need to reduce the pre-snap motions and shifts. He needs to simplify the passing routes and simplify the plays. Use the run game more. Reduce the penalties in special teams, and a lot of this is cafecito break. Very nice, very nice. Or do you have water in there? Are you a fraud, or is that real cute?
No, I got water separately, but
I do it. All right, just making sure. No, but McDaniel has got to make this offense easier to understand. And look, Furones, when I was watching the apples and oranges, but I was watching the Cal game, and I'm just looking at these Cal receivers just running simple routes and getting wide open. And I'm like, why can't Mike McDaniel do this? Like, is definitely the better team athletically, right? They're more athletically gifted. They probably have a better coaching staff, a higher regarded coaching staff. But here's Cal, just like wide open. These dudes are. Why can't the Dolphins do this? Why can't Mike McDaniel do this? Make things simpler. Make life easier for your players. And look, I understand that you don't want to phase out the pre-snap motion and the shifts because it's temporary, right? Tua's coming back, and why make a huge change for 4 weeks when you're just going to have to go back to it again? Well, I'm sorry. I mean, actually, your backup quarterback ought to be able to run it, but he couldn't. We don't need to go back into that, but Skyler couldn't do it. So now you have Snoop Huntley. Well, you had Tim Boyle, but Snoop Huntley. But you just got to make things easier. You're making your guys work too hard. So I do think that, do what some of these other teams have done. Like we saw, I guess the Jets are a bad example, but they have a new head coach and offensive play caller last night, and they're able to do some things. Just make it simpler, Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, if it's some kind of marriage between it's, like find a happy medium.
Yeah.
I've said previously, I think on here, and also with Big O, who we both make appearances with. Yep. That would be best, I think. But yeah, I think in Mike McDaniel's mind, it's too much. It's what he wants to do. He sees a lot of advantages. He knows the advantages he can find when it's all running the way it should be. But at the end of the day, you need to have your team prepared to execute this more complex offense. And if the team is not adequately prepared for it with ample practice time running it, and especially when a new quarterback comes in, then you have to take some of that stuff out and simplify it. It just comes down to it. So, especially when you have the athletes that can win, like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Tyler Huntley in the open field against a lot of these linebackers. You can just let them play some backyard ball, and they can win. Devon Achane in the backfield, and Raheem Mostert. So all these guys, you finally got Jonnu Smith into the offense this past week. So yeah, if there was some kind of medium they could find, but I do understand how. Well, now at this point, you only have one game left before now Tua's potential return. So, yeah, you're not going to make drastic changes at this point. Granted, although, as we've said in segment one, this game could be huge. Just to get you to Tua's return at 3-3 as opposed to 2-4 is a big difference. As big as an October 15th, well, that's today's date. Whatever Sunday. October 20th regular season game, about as big as it gets.
There you go, man. Yeah, I was trying to do the math.
Yeah, that's about as yeah. There's a lot of
I didn't know.
But
Trinity Soundworks, thanks for checking in for the first 30 minutes of the show. Good to see you. Sean Heller, what's up? Matthew Blue, what's going on? Miami Kid J. Here's one from PDC talking about what Mike McDaniel can do. He can do this. Get in some guys' face and demand better play. These guys respond to tough love. They've had it growing up and respond to it, especially if you challenge their manhood. That's not the way Mike McDaniel operates. This is as much as a team, a player-operated operation as I've ever seen. Me and Dave Hyde have talked about that. Me and you have talked about that I've never seen an environment like this that is so player-friendly. I call the McDaniel era the great experiment because I've just never seen this level of player empowerment. And I think to a certain extent, I agree with you, PDC. You do need to get in somebody's face and let them know that this crap is not going to be tolerated. The penalties and all of this kind of stuff, blown assignments defensively, wrong patterns offensively, this sloppy play won't be tolerated, but you kind of got to be yourself also. And that at this point, 2.5 years in, that might come off as a little bit fake for Mike McDaniel. I think he's already kind of established who he is. Maybe you need somebody else on staff, Anthony Weaver or somebody else, to be that tough guy. But I do agree with you, PDC. Somebody needs to get in these players' faces. And, look, we've seen some things from Tyreek, right? Some antics on social media of, like, I woke up this morning hearing about a trade, right? Didn't he tweeted something like that? I would like for Jalen Ramsey or Calais Campbell or Teron Armstead to pull Tyreek aside respectfully and say, hey, just why don't you just chill on this kind of stuff? And maybe that's what needs to happen on this team. Players go to other players, but the penalties and the blown coverages and things like that, Furones, I agree with PDC. Somebody needs to get in somebody's face in that building.
Yeah, and you're right. As far as it's the way Mike McDaniel operates, he doesn't put it on himself to go and get in spaces. Now, it could help when you have certain personalities on the coaching staff that can do that. I see Butch Berry as the type of coach who could, with his play, get in the offensive lineman's face. I think we do see that and actually hear it oftentimes at practice from Danny Crawford with the special teams unit. When they blow an assignment on a special teams coverage they're working on, you hear his voice often. As much maligned as he is, I think you do see that personality in him. I don't know if Frank Smith is that type of coach. I think Anthony Weaver has it in him, but also he's just such a great and nice guy too. So I don't know how often he does. He's just a great dude. But I think he has it in him just from being a former player and now going into the coaching ranks as far as just those type of leadership traits. Hey, like Calais Campbell also. He's a guy award winner, but he's got that in him because he's the guy that rallies the team around him pregame and warm-ups. He's the one that's got the whole 53 or whatever the active 48 guys around him, and he gets them all hyped up before the game. And we know he's just capable of being that type of team locker room leader. So the thing with Tyreek Hill is that he's just kind of too good to go and have that conversation with. Now, he hasn't produced that much this year, and a lot of it has to do with the quarterback situation being in flux. I'm pretty sure a lot of fantasy owners who drafted him in the first round are not happy with his start to the season, as he has not produced to expectation, and very early has kind of put himself out of any 2,000-yard talk. Whereas it went deep into last year where it was still a possibility, but. He was the number one player in the NFL 100 as voted on by his peers. So he's not the guy that you kind of in that locker room go and sit down and say you need to change because he's so much to what this team needs to find success on the field.
Matthew Blue says, is there anyone the Fins could trade for to add depth to the pass rushers? I don't think that's imminent. They did just trade for Bradley Chubb 2 years ago, 2022. But Chubb is coming back, and we don't know what the deal is with Ogba. But I don't see them. And look, we know that Detroit's going to be in the market for an edge rusher also, right? Because Aiden Hutchinson is out. So you're going to have some competition. I don't see them making a move for a pass rusher. I think they just try to hang on and cross their fingers until Chubb comes back. Do you see them making a move, Furones?
I could maybe. I think you're getting a lot coming in with Bradley Chubb once he is able to return, and we don't know when that is because he's still not coming back to practice yet off of last December's ACL tear. So there's that. You're counting on the development of Chop Robinson, eventually the development of Mohamed Kamara. He still hasn't gotten to the point where he's even active on a game day. Where the Dolphins haven't trusted him to that point yet, so they need improvement from him. Emmanuel Ogba, so for listeners who may not have understood when you said we don't know what the deal is with is we him at practice yesterday and also during the bye week. Right. Although we do believe he did come out of the Patriots game healthy. The week before he did get some veteran rest, so it would seem peculiar if it's just veteran rest 1 week and then veteran rest again on the Monday before. So maybe there's something that he's been dealing with as a residual coming out of that game against New England. But we'll find out more tomorrow. The first injury report comes out ahead of Colts week. And Tyus Bowser can help you as well. But maybe they make some kind of move, not like a huge blockbuster trade for a pass rusher, but maybe something that could get you through this season for a reliable pass rusher on a team that just by the time the trade deadline comes is kind of out of the maybe.
Yep. Kyle Soros says, what about Devin White? JD, the great one, I wish they would make a move for a pass rusher. Matt Newton, Hassan Reddick is available for the right price. We know Hassan just hired Drew Rosenhaus, actually, who works very well with the Dolphins.
Right? Yeah. I would doubt the Jets would make the move in the division and send him to a team that they 2 times later on this year.
Yes.
Maybe Detroit. That's what I tweeted. Is that this screams Lions, but you never know. Different type of pass on Reddick.
Right. Miami Kid J says, Furones, Tyreek, when it matters the most in big games, disappears. He's right. Well, I should say Miami Kid J is right. Miami Kid J could be female. But listen, I agree. And here's what I always say. It's not just one person. Mike McDaniel doesn't do well in those big games. Tua, in his last 8 games against playoff teams, 8 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Tyreek doesn't get 100-yard games. Jalen Waddle doesn't get 100-yard games. Raheem Mostert, 21 touchdowns last year, 1 against a playoff team. It's not just one person. It's a lot of their best players don't show up in the big games. It's not just one person. It's not just Tua. It's not just Tyreek. It's all of them collectively. Off the top of my head, and I've said this, I bet if we went back, Zach Sealer might be the best and most consistent performer for this team in big games. You remember in that playoff game in Buffalo, he had the 5-yard fumble return for a touchdown. But that, to me, that's the bigger problem. All of these guys don't come around in the big games. Don't produce.
Yeah. Something that has plagued this team. Last year, you saw the 1-6 record against winning teams. I couldn't believe it when after the opener, a home win against the Jaguars where you trailed most of the game, won with a last-second field goal to get to 20 points, and Tyreek Hill was bringing up the narratives of last year and saying maybe the narratives need to be changed. I was like, hey, you beat a non-playoff team from last year at home, week 1, like when you're supposed to, and then 4 days later, you completely blow a game against the Bills at home, which, you got to, on a short week at home, you got to beat the Bills if you're competing with them in the division. I just couldn't believe we were hearing that week 1, and then you see the start that they go on as 1-3 and losing what he did against Buffalo. But, now they're trying to get through this stretch, and then we'll see what comes of the later stretch where, we thought the later half of the schedule was going to be tougher, but now some of those games don't seem as difficult. The Jets have fired their coach, although now they're bringing Devontae Adams into the mix. You beat them twice.
Yeah.
The Rams have gotten off to a bad start. The Browns, who were a playoff team last year, you thought that Sunday night game in Week 17 was going to be something. Well, they look terrible right now. A lot of those games, you figured Patriots and Raiders at home that you should take care of that. At Green Bay on Thanksgiving is a tough one. But some of those games that you thought were going to be a lot tougher, maybe not as tough, but still you have San Francisco, Houston in that mix. You still have that second game at Buffalo. So, it will still present several challenges this second half of the schedule.
I like this one from Matt Newton. When you said before that Danny Crossman is a voice that we hear, he yells at players when they mess up during special teams. Danny Crossman must not have a voice left, all the miscues on that unit. Yeesh. Very nice. Well done, Matt. Maybe
that's why there's so many miscues on game day, is because he loses his voice during the week, yelling at the players, and then the special teams players can never hear him.
That's right. Exactly, man. That might be it. We go now to True Blazer, who promotes the Furones bonus. So, what we are going to do is talk about one of the top 4 segments on this 4-segment show, the Furones bonus. Oh,
the Furones bonus.
I love it, baby. I love it. All right, Furones, we are going to talk backup quarterbacks as you wanted to do. We know the Dolphins on Sunday are going to face Anthony Richardson. We thought there was a chance that they would face Joe Flacco, but Richardson is over the oblique injury, so they're going to face Anthony Richardson. Here's the question. Who is the backup quarterback the Dolphins do not want to face this season? They've already lost to Mason Rudolph from Tennessee, right? But there's a bunch of them. The New York Jets have Tyrod Taylor. He's a pretty good backup. The Rams have Jimmy Garoppolo. He could be a good backup. With Buffalo, you would want to face Mitch Trubisky because that means you don't have to face your daddy, Josh Allen. But he is. He's their daddy, right? He is.
Yes. You to put it in those terms, though.
The truth is the truth. So
I want to hear you ask a question to a player referring to Josh Allen as your daddy.
That will not happen. I like my teeth. That will not happen. So Furones, who do you think is the backup quarterback on the Dolphins' schedule that they do not want to face?
It's got to be Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy G just seems like the most capable guy. Hey, Gardner Minshew in Vegas as well. We've seen what he's capable of. But Jimmy G, he runs also the same offense, just coming from San Francisco. So he was the guy that you would have liked to see the Dolphins pursue. Now, of course, they had Mike White in the fold, and he was a cheaper contract, and they wanted to see if they could get by again with him, especially since Tua was just coming off his lone fully healthy season of his NFL career. You thought maybe, okay, well, it didn't come into play in 2023. Maybe you could get by another year. And then that has reared its ugly head. So if you had Jimmy Garoppolo here, I think you would have come close to at least not missing much of a beat, where you don't fear losing to the Tennessee Titans or come down to a heel touching the end line against the Patriots.
Yeah.
You win those games, I think, maybe comfortably, and you can compete in Seattle and probably go into Indianapolis and win this one, and you're not fearing this game as much toward whether you're going 2-4 into Tua's return or not. So that would have been such a valuable backup, especially with his knowledge of the offense. You wouldn't have had all these miscues. So it would just be devastating if if let's say for some reason the Rams are going to him by then and he goes and beats you, then that would just be crushing to the Dolphins, especially when the Rams are they're 1-4 now at this point. And now you're looking at, especially since the Dolphins have lost some games early, you have to win that game in LA on a Monday night, then that would be crushing if Jimmy G is the guy that goes and beats you. So if we're playing those kind of what ifs, then I would say him, especially because he's the guy that he would have been great if the Dolphins picked him up and had him for this 4-game stretch without Tua. Then I would have been all on board with, give Tua all the time he needs to put him on IR. Shoot, give him another week after. So he just gets a practice week before. Jimmy G can hold you off through all of that, and I wouldn't fret it as much.
Yeah, the Dolphins got in trouble with they knocked Jimmy G out in San Francisco a couple of years ago, and then Brock Purdy came on and won that game. Yeah, Tyrod Taylor is a guy who I saw beat them numerous times in Buffalo. Jameis Winston is in Cleveland. I don't know if you fear him, if you want to eat a W, if you're in that kind of a mood.
Based on Watson and the way he's playing, then Jameis Winston will probably provide a significant upgrade. Now, I would tell Taylor he has a good history against the Dolphins. Aside from he played against them, there was one game, 2021, and that was just an awful performance. But then you are avoiding Aaron Rodgers if you do get Tyrod Taylor. So,
right.
Sure.
Right. Hey, let me ask you this, Furones. So the game is up in Indy this weekend. I'm staying. You and Dave Hyde are going. But you know what? No, so I might have told you this before. We're in it's the fall now. Obviously, I might have told you it's the fall before. It's
fall, and I was unaware.
Right. Exactly. That's why you tune into the show. But the leaves might be changing up there in Indy. And when I was covering,
you've done weather too as a beat, so you know stuff.
That's insider knowledge. Insider knowledge, baby. So when I was covering UM back in '97, the team was going up to Boston College, and I remarked to one of the players, "Hey, we get to see the leaves turn." And he looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. You grew up down here in South Florida. You see palm trees that are green all year." Furones, you grew up down here in South Florida. You see palm trees that are green all year. What is your favorite city to go to in the fall? And favorite NFL city to go to in the fall?
There's so many that are just nice this time of year. I think back to our Chicago trip 2 years ago, that was early November, correct?
Yeah.
And to get fortunate that it wasn't colder. So, what was it, like around 60 that day?
Yeah. Beautiful. Yep.
I wasn't throwing on extra layers. I just kind of, like in a normal sport coat over whatever shirt I had on, a button-down shirt underneath. and was fine, and it felt great to be in that Midwest air. The week before that too. Now the Detroit game, and I know people think Detroit, but I went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, the night before, and got to check out a Michigan State game, and then all around that campus, you saw those leaves, all the different colored leaves. So that was probably the best example of exactly that I've had on NFL travel. So that was really cool to see, just something I'm not used to. There was one UM trip during COVID. I went to UM Virginia Tech, and then going from Roanoke making a drive to Blacksburg, Virginia. Then I saw a lot of some mountains, and then also those kind of leaves turning like that. So that was a nice sight. Aside from just it's not as much to do as when you're in Miami and such. So the Northeast would be similar, but Dolphins Patriots games I've only had sort of like very early or very late in the year. Now we were fortunate that the New Year's Day trip to Foxborough, it wasn't that cold for that one. I was fearing snow on that drive. Buffalo, I've been in the extreme cold and the in the snow there. Don't need to see that. See it enough as it is. City don't need to be back in that cold. That was the first time I was in sub-zero temperatures, but I'm sure there are some other times where it's nice out. But Chicago really comes to mind. That trip was really nice.
Yeah, and you know what? I would think Jacksonville would be nice. Miami and Tampa are we're still a little too humid and so like Thanksgiving, but I would think Jacksonville's nice. Houston is starting to cool off. I would think Seattle would be a great trip. Denver would be a great trip in the fall. Yeah, but I think you normally think Northeast, Midwest kind of for the fall. That's normally what I think.
Absolutely, and the Dolphins have Green Bay on Thanksgiving Day.
Yes. Yep.
The way I'm doing that trip, and it came out cheaper on the company because Chicago hotels were pretty cheap. Although Green Bay and Appleton, Wisconsin area, I saw hotels were pretty expensive. I said, wait, I can get the company off better with a cheaper rate in Chicago. I'll just drive over the day of the game. It's a night game. I have all day Thanksgiving to drive over. So Wednesday night I'm spending in Chicago. At a better rate, and then so I'll get to see it now. Hopefully, it's not snowing for that trip because then I'll have a long drive. Oh, and that would be that would be a tough one to execute. But
it would backfire in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Furones. So, look, we come to our final segment of the show, and it is prediction time. So. It is Dolphins at Colts, 1 o'clock on Sunday. Boy, this is a tough one. Look, I think Jonathan Taylor is a big one for the Colts also. Their running back, he's got an ankle injury, I believe it is. I think that's what it is anyway, but that's going to be a big factor here. And look, I think guard is not a sexy position, but the Colts have Quentin Nelson, the future Hall of Fame guard, is 6 Pro Bowls in 6 seasons. The Dolphins are weak in run defense. They're weak at some of those defensive tackles once you get past Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell. So I think a lot of these things are going to be factors. I'm going Dolphins 17, Colts 14. I don't feel real good about it, Furones, but I'm going to take the Dolphins to win this road game and win a close road game. Who do you like and why?
Okay. I will go the other way, but a close one as well. Fairly low scoring. I'm going Colts 20, Dolphins 17. I'll feel a lot better about it if Jonathan Taylor is going. The Colts didn't really get their run game going too much. In this past week's win over the Tennessee Titans, which was a road win, a good win for them there. To do so without Jonathan Taylor and with Joe Flacco as a backup quarterback in. So here's an example of a team winning games with its backup quarterback. Joe Flacco could have been another one that maybe the Dolphins could have pursued and been in a better position this year, especially after he won. Well, he was the comeback player of the year last year, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Defeating the odds-on favorite, DeMar Hamlin. After he came back from that scary cardiac arrest. So Flacco really, earned it on the field, leading the Browns into the playoffs. last year after they had Nick Chubb go down and everything. So, and he's done it again, getting the Colts to 3-3. So it seems like Anthony Richardson, this will be his first game back. Could be good or could be bad for the Dolphins. That brings another element to the run game for them, is that you have to account for him, both as a runner and a passer when he drops back, and then also in the run game, especially if it's him and Jonathan Taylor, then you fear for having to defend all the different option type reads that they can run with both of them back there. So the Dolphins have struggled against some running quarterbacks in the past, so I wonder in that regard. Now, that's past defensive coordinators. I don't know if Anthony Weaver will come up with a better game plan for it. He was in Baltimore where, hey, they were always practicing against Lamar Jackson, so better suited to be prepared for that kind of look. But Dolphins, a team that has struggled against the run, so we're going to need to see them step up in that regard, but then also be able to run the football themselves and just have Snoop Huntley give them enough of a game. But ultimately, on the road, I see the Colts winning by 3.
Yeah, I just don't I don't trust the Dolphins on the road, but I don't trust this Colts team either, and that's the bigger thing to me. And I've been saying this all season. Well, the previous few games. I think this is the game that they get the ball to Tyreek deep, and it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened except for that 80-yard pass against Jacksonville, which was kind of a catch and run, really, more than a deep throw. The Waddle one was a deep throw. They've got to be able to get this guy the ball deep. I mean, I just think that at some point that's really going to click for them. So we'll see. Rob says Colts 17, Dolphins 17.5. Yeah, I like that.
I think that would be
like Fins 28-24. Let's see. Billy Batson, welcome. EJ Barrow, welcome. Who else did I want to give a shout out to here? That was that. Oh, you know what? It was baseball with Jutt. He had a good question here about Tua and and him being here it is, baseball with Jutt. Welcome. I think this is regarding Tua. I think putting him on IR and treating him differently than every other player who gets a concussion makes him an open target to keep talking about his concussions. To revisit that, Furones, do you think that action just raises the awareness and the severity of Tua nationally, not even locally? Does that have bad results?
Well, and so they did it in part. Obviously, there's a lot of other factors that go into it, like someone else who we know says that a lot. But in part, that decision, I know you like that one.
I did.
That decision was to quiet the conversation around it, so that it's not a week-to-week thing. Where does Tua stand in his in the stages of concussion protocol and advancing through protocol? Is he going to be eligible for this game coming up? So the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel, so that they wouldn't have to face that question each and every week. So that was part of it, was to just say, all right, we're putting him on IR. This isn't even a topic until a month and a half later when he's first eligible to return. So that's part of it, but now it also brings into focus that he's the one player that early in a season goes into concussion protocol and goes into an IR stint because of it. He's the one player. No one else is being treated that way. If it's late in the year, I know we've seen, I think, whether it was Teddy Bridgewater, one of his, before he joined the Dolphins, where he had 3 weeks left, and I can't remember if he was put on IR or not. Tua, that 2022, that second one, because there was 2, maybe even a third within the same season. Then obviously the stint on IR was obvious at that point. You pack it in with him on the year, but early in the season, I mean, that derails seasons. If at a minimum you're losing a quarterback for 4 games plus the one that he exited early because of a concussion suffered, so that it's different protocol for him than everyone else in the league, which is concerning.
Fleming Law checks in with Colts 24, Fins 3. Mark chimes in, would anyone start Tyreek or Waddle in fantasy? That's a good question. I maybe if you don't have anybody else, what do you think, Furones? Are those good? Before we get out of here, I've got one more too. But are they good fantasy bets this week?
Yeah, it depends on how good your bench is, what other options you have. But now the Colts defense, they don't stop the run and they don't stop the pass either. They're 26 against the pass and they're 31st against the run. So there are opportunities for this Dolphins offense. But then you also have to factor, okay, it's a backup quarterback. It's not Tua running the offense the same way. It's last year's number one offense. It's actually one of the worst offenses in the NFL in its current state right now. Now, how much we already saw some big improvement one week to another from Tyler Huntley running the offense with a bye week. Maybe there could be a lot to gain in how he operates things and how he distributes to his pass catchers. So basically, I would look at it. If you have other good options, go for it. But if not, then yeah, then go ahead and start Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. But you can count on them the way you have once Tua does come back, I believe.
JD the Great One checks in with 13-10 Dolphins. We will end it here. This is an excellent point here by Peter McDowell. Dome will be loud, so that is going to be a factor with a QB center combo, not with much experience. That was a problem in Seattle. Skylar Thompson told us that. EJ Barrow says that'll reduce the O-line's propensity for false starts and pressure on Huntley to snap, plus the overall rhythm. That might be the answer to something else. But what about this noise in the Dome? Could it be a factor, do you think, Furones?
Yeah, which also, we circle back to this Tua conversation again. Could that have been a factor in the Dolphins looking ahead and saying, okay, well, if we don't put him on IR, we just send him through the bye week. That first game back is in a dome in a potentially loud environment in Indianapolis Lucas Oil Stadium, where maybe you don't want him coming back first game back in that setting, and you do want him to be comfortable at home, get a home game in against the Arizona Cardinals. Before then, the one that's after is at Buffalo. So yeah, you would definitely want him to have a game under his belt before you go into that environment. But maybe that was part of the thinking. Even though they say it's no timelines, I think you do look ahead and say, can you afford to keep him out these 4 games? And then if you look at the 4th game and say it's a road game, maybe that was part of the thinking in saying we don't want him back going into a loud environment. But I expect it to be louder than Gillette Stadium, for example, where Patriots fans are fed up with how after they were spoiled for 20 years, they probably just can't stand it, especially when they found out Jacoby Brissett was starting again when they wanted to get to the Drake May era, which began the following week. So I do understand from the Dolphins' perspective wanting to get Tua back in a home environment first game back. Like the previous time, it was home against the Steelers, his first game back, where he struggled in that one. And then the next game, I believe, was the Detroit game, where he had a very fine outing and had a good stretch after that. Detroit, Chicago, and whichever one came after that. I remember he had a good stretch of
Cleveland, maybe?
Or Cleveland, was it Cleveland or Houston? I think Cleveland, then Houston, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Matt Newton says 21-13 Colts, and we will finish with EJ Barrow, who says watch the time between the play call and the set versus the success of the play. So I think that's a very good point. That's something that is, again, on Mike McDaniel, simplify this offense, run the ball more, reduce the penalties, and we'll see if the Dolphins can come away with a victory.
Perk, that's when we get our writing done, is when it's that long over plays over. All right, we got some to get some of our writing, get up to date on our writing. We can get that up right away once the game is over. Oh, okay.
That's right.
Look up.
That's right. We need a little bit of a struggle right there, don't we? We need a little time right there. We don't want to see all that hurry up stuff. That throws us off. So, all right. Let's see. All right, EJ, I got you. Yeah, McD need to get the play calls in quickly for the prior reasons. You're exactly right, EJ. All right. That's David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. Thanks for checking in with us this week. We will see you next Tuesday at noon, sunsentinel.com, Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk.